Hello, and welcome to Sharp, the podcast where we help you get a little better at the stuff you have to do, so you can spend more time doing the stuff you want to do. So now, on with the episode. Hello, and welcome to episode 8. Wow, 8 episodes already. Where's the time gone? I hope you've been enjoying them, and importantly, I hope that you're finding them useful. If you're a new listener, thank you ever so much for joining. This episode is the format where instead of me sharing solutions from online resource and so on, we'll be having a conversation with someone about what getting better looks like for them in their work and their life. This week, we'll be talking to Mel Elliott. Mel is a very successful UK-based professional voiceover artist. In this conversation, we talk about what life is like as a voiceover artist, but also how Mel solves some of the problems that come up when working in a really fluid and changing world. I hope you enjoy the chat, and I'll come back at the end just to find out how much you liked it. So, without further ado, here's Mel Elliott, who's having fun with a stool.
I've actually got a stool that's a bit spinny.
Okay.
I'm trying.
Spinny?
Well, it's a.
Is that the technical term?
Yeah, it's it's a breakfast bar stool, but I can't. I've got it on the lowest setting, and I can't actually touch my feet on the floor. So I'm kind of feeling like I might spin a little bit.
So it's been a sunny day. You've been scheduling and all that kind of stuff. So tell the world, if you don't mind, a little bit about who you are.
Okay.
Where you're from and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Mel Elliott.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Steve. First and foremost, I'm a mum, I guess I should say, a mum of one beautiful 8-year-old daughter and a partner. I have an other half, a better half, I often refer to him as, who is a teacher, has a very demanding job, a teacher and deputy head in his school. So like lots of mums, I keep us in order, on track, so to speak.
Yeah.
My working background was in the public sector, actually, for 20 plus years, I would say. Specifically in planning and commissioning of adult health and social care services. So a corporate background, corporate environment. But nowadays, and for the last 4 years, very nearly, 4 years, I keep myself out of mischief by paying my way as a self-employed voiceover artist. And I'm also the local school web manager, I should say. They pay me for that.
Is this full disclosure?
Yeah,
just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Just in case the Inland Revenue are listening.
Oh gosh.
We can edit out any bits.
And then on top of that, I should add, I suppose, because this is all part of stuff you do in the day, isn't it? Voluntarily, I'm involved, like many parents are, in our local parents' association, for which I wear various hats. So this year, for example, I am officially titled the Fate Manager, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year.
Is that F-E-T-E or F-A-T-E?
Well, with me in charge this year, who knows?
Depends how it goes.
It could be either, couldn't it? Yes. No, F-E-T-E. And it's our biggest fundraiser. We're quite a big school, 2 schools on the same site in infants and juniors. So thousands of people attend our fete. It raises, £7,000-8,000. 10 of us plan it, to which I have to guide this year. 120 volunteers on the day. So big task. Although it's a voluntary piece of work, it's a big task. And as it's a registered charity as well, which lots of parents' associations are, we're required by the Charities Commission to have a board of trustees, of which I'm the chair. So another hat. How many hats is that? I don't know.
I've counted 3 so far.
Oh, it's possibly more. But anyway, a fair bit of juggling.
I've never been very good at counting.
A fair bit of juggling. Let's just
juggling as well.
Yes, and some juggle. I can juggle, actually. Can you?
I can, but not for significantly long periods of time. I can do.
How many items?
Only 3. But
okay.
I can do probably for about 20 seconds before I drop something. I'm safer doing it over a sofa. So So school governor stuff, voiceover, designing the webs, mum, crikey. There's only 24 hours in the day. It sounds like you probably fill them all up.
I do.
That one must be hectic.
Yeah, it is. I like to be busy, Steve. I do like to be busy. I'm not a person that enjoys not having something to do, but it is hectic. And actually, when I left my job 4 years ago, I had a very demanding job, and like many people, I don't take for granted the opportunity I had to just say I'm going to leave that behind. It was a personal choice, but it was a stressful job, and that's partly why I left it behind.
Yeah.
And now I've simply filled my time with lots more things, but by choice.
Would you say that you feel more or less stressed than when you were doing that job?
Oh gosh, far less.
Okay.
We have. I didn't realise at the time that it was going to be as good as we've managed to achieve. We have a very, very good work-life balance now. As a family, it's worked so much better. I maintain in our situation that wasn't the way it could carry on. Both of us couldn't have the big, demanding career.
I get the sense that people are starting to make honest decisions about what that really means because, as a person who's worked in a number of different industries, it's evident that job for life, working 9 to 5 every day, weekends off, that routine, that pattern just doesn't fit for a lot of people. And people are seeking more creative, more constructive alternatives that can give more back to their life without it necessarily, without so much having to be taken away.
Yeah, and particularly for families, not always, but for being able to give the time to my family. My daughter was important to me, or to us, I should say. So it wasn't going to be possible if we carried on the way we were. And it goes so quick. It's a real cliche, isn't it? It goes so quick. Their childhood goes too fast. I can't believe she'll be 9 this year, and that's gone in a flash. So it was the right thing to do for us, and it works well. And I enjoy it, really enjoy it. It's great.
So for the benefit of our listeners, I think most people would understand corporate work and schools and school governors. Voiceovers, what's that all about?
So, the breadth of jobs that I can do is really vast, actually. So I do a lot of corporate work. I've embraced, I should say, my corporate roots. I thought I'd escape. So I do lots of e-learning, business-to-business videos, promotional videos, this is what we do type videos. Yeah. The annoying woman that you ring that you hear when you ring the bank. Please hold, press 1, press 2, all that kind of stuff. And advertising. So, your radio, telly, adverts, all those kind of things. And I record that. I have a studio. I'm in a shed currently at the bottom of my garden that's been
not in
converted. Yeah, I'm not being B&Q. Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? No, I'm at the bottom of my garden.
So that's again, there'll be a lot of people listening to this that won't understand, what that means, and obviously for the benefit of anybody that doesn't know us. Obviously, we met through voiceovers. Well, in fact, there's a story there, isn't it? Because we have only just met. But in terms of being a professionally employed and engaged voiceover artist, what does that mean in terms of your average day? What are the sorts of things you're having to juggle and manage? Okay,
so obviously you have to, like any business, you have to source your work. So for voiceovers, that's done in a variety of ways, but the most obvious one, I suppose, is auditions. So you learn about jobs through, there's various voiceover websites, or you can have an agent, which I have, one in America, for example, that sends you auditions to go for. Or indeed companies directly. There's marketing, you have to market your service. So approach companies that do video production and what have you. So there's your auditions themselves, and that secures your work, not necessarily for the next day, but that would be next week's work, for example, if indeed you were their voice of choice. Then there's the jobs themselves when you get booked for a job. So you receive a script, You have to check that script, prepare the script. Does it make sense? Are there any things that you need to check with your client? Need to be pronounced in a certain way? Acronyms, for example, a nightmare. Do you say DAB? Would you say DAB? Would you say DAB? Would you say in full? All those kind of things. Preparing the script, how you would actually perform, if you want to use that word, how you would actually deliver the piece. All of that happens before you actually walk into your booth and press record. So there's all that. We have to do our business planning. All of those things are part of not your daily routine, but you have to have those booked in to do.
So it feels like then, and again, for the benefit of people that I can't sort of picture what you do, it feels like you're managing input in terms of these auditions are coming in, or you'll get a list of potential auditions that you can apply for, you decide to apply for. Mm-hmm. Then you're managing the ones you choose to go ahead. So I suppose for people that work in the area of sales, that's a kind of a customer relationship management sort of thing. You know, I'm going to progress these to the next stage, and I'm going to move them on to something that I am going to audition for, I'm going to keep an eye on. And then, as I understand it, once those auditions have gone live and they come back and point the finger and then say, yeah, it's you, then you're actually going into doing the actual live recording for the client, and there's a lot of work involved there as well. So that sounds to me, that feels like that input that you've got coming in, the auditions and the ones to go for and all that kind of stuff, I presume they don't come in bite-sized chunks.
You have to be able to manage a very flexible schedule, I would say, all round in all of those different things, those tasks that I've mentioned. And that's a skill, actually. It is a skill. You've got all of these jobs that you need to do, those that can wait a little bit later. And I suppose when you work for yourself as well, very different to my corporate years of having to answer to somebody else. Yeah. I guess the autonomy I have could mean if I let it, nothing gets done, does it? Yeah. I choose, don't I? I choose how and when I do things.
And the fact that no one's telling you what to do means that you've got to make your own mind up about actually what is the right thing to do.
Yes. So
how do you prioritise that stuff then? Because let's say you have 3 auditions come in for similar jobs. They all look good. They all pay well. But you've only got time to do one of them.
I have 2 lists, I suppose. And I do my planning. I mentioned it earlier. I do my planning actually for the next week on a Friday. So that's the last thing I will do before kind of clocking off my weekend is I will plan roughly, because it always has to be roughly. It's got to be flexible. This is what I'll slot in next week. And then each day, as part of my morning routine, the first thing I will do when I sit in the office is I relook at that. And I from the auditions that have come in overnight, for example, you work out, you can't do them all sometimes. So if you can't do them all, you have to consider which of those are more suited to you. But that's just basic prioritization. So I would do that. So in my lists in the morning, I have these are the things I have got to do today, and these are the less important things to do. And more often than what happens is those that are on the second list become the first list the next day, if that makes sense. They will then become a higher priority, won't they, as the days go on. And then I have a rolling set of lists, I would say. I'm a list queen of all of those hats that I have. I kind of oversee the tasks that need to be done, and there's obviously deadlines, isn't there, for them that come closer, and they just kind of keep coming up the list. It is manageable, and you just get used to your system, I suppose. I thought when I escaped the corporate world, I would ditch all of this. I was a project management trained, all the jargon that you have, and I thought, no, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing all that. I don't have to. And actually, what's happened?
Here you are, managing your voiceover project.
Exactly. And what's happened is I do all of those things, and it's absolutely right that I use the skills that I learned. I use them. I just don't use the jargon, I guess. So I use simpler language, probably.
And that's for me that really strikes at the heart of what we're trying to get across here, because there are many people out there that do something that they wouldn't necessarily label as complex or world changing or or big in terms of its magnitude. But it's the little things, isn't it? Even not just in terms of what we do for a living, what we do with our families and what we do in our spare time and what we do to keep our creative juices going and to feel like we're moving forward with something. It's making sure all of those little things happen that takes us forward. And I think sometimes people separate some of the techniques and processes that you might use in the corporate world and think, well, that wouldn't apply to home life. We talked to Lisa a couple of weeks ago about something as simple as
meal planning.
Yeah, preparing meals.
You could say, yeah. Oh, I smiled. Thank you, Lisa. I smiled when she talked about meal planning. A woman after my own heart. I meal plan. You have to.
But there'll be many people out there who wouldn't do that. Not because they're lazy or they're not considered people. I find it really intriguing because I think that people will sit behind a desk in a work environment and be very clear about the processes and you use the word systems, the systems they've got in place to get an end result, and then come home and open the fridge and ask themselves a question: what's for dinner? And it's I just find it really interesting that there's that kind of separation.
I have a friend who's never worked in the corporate world, and in fact, she's been a stay-at-home mum, 5 children.
Wow.
And she talks, she talks as if the things that she does, aren't like you've just said, aren't of any value to anybody else, the things she does. And actually, some of the routines that she has, they're fab and they're time-saving and they're things that you can share with other people and you don't necessarily realise are, hopefully that's the idea, isn't it, of the podcast, the things that people can share that hopefully someone else will say, oh gosh, I could do that, yeah. So I think that's what helps me survive. If I don't plan it and I don't kind of continue with my routine, I do have a routine, and fascinating your whole conversation about habits, that helps keep me in line. That's how I stay on track.
So if you think about the recording of the voiceover project as a process, in terms of the audition comes in, you record for an audition, you're successful, you get awarded the gig, you carry on the work. And I think a lot of people won't realise that what goes on behind that to produce sometimes a 30-second piece of audio can take a whole day to get to that point, given the back and forth with clients and script preparation and so on. So it is a bit chicken and egg in terms of how long it's going to take. But I know that the other thing that you'll be thinking is you will want to make sure that whatever goes out there is a high standard and you won't want to compromise on that.
That's right. So one of the things I do as well, going back to my flexible schedule and managing those priorities, and we've had this conversation before and I know you were horrified at one of the things that I do, is
one.
Probably there's probably many, but one in particular that you could not mask your horror, because it was when we actually were meeting in person, was that I have my plan, obviously, the day before, what's going to happen next day, based on the information that I have to hand. But my clients are worldwide. So often what happens is that I wake up to emails that will dictate my day changing. So perhaps, think of an example, a job that I've done the day before needs something changing in it and it needs changing today. Or a job that I've auditioned for, I've been booked for, and actually it is an urgent one, needs doing today. So I might have planned in that morning a run. And it might be that I choose not to do that run first thing in the morning, like I usually prefer to before I start my working day, but would switch that to later on. And the way in which I determine that is as soon as I wake up, and I know, and this is the bit you're horrified at, is the first thing I do is I read my emails. Because if I don't, then I spend my first hour thinking about what might have come in and whether I need to switch my day. Well, it would determine what I get dressed in, because am I putting my trainers on or so I read my emails to go through and work out, well, actually I can't go for my run first thing this morning. I will have to prioritise those jobs because, like you say, I want to make sure that they're done properly, they're given the right amount of time. So it will determine my day. I read my emails as soon as I wake up.
The thing I was horrified about wasn't that you read your emails.
It was
even
I was
as
in
soon
bed.
as you wake up, it's you're still in bed. You read them before you even get out of bed.
Well, it's not immediate if I've got out of bed, is it?
Dear me.
Who doesn't? Oh, well, I wouldn't ever. I don't have my iPad there in that I would read it in the middle of the night. It's charging so that I can pick it up in the morning and then scan my emails.
So that clearly works for you. And obviously one of the unique challenges of what you do means that it's a moving feast in terms of when you've got to deliver some of these things by. And, we both know there's a physicality to doing voiceovers. You can't go out for a morning run straight into your booth and record something.
No.
There's a bit of preparation for it.
And actually, it going for a run eats into a significant part of my day.
Yeah.
But one of the things I changed, as well as doing the work that I do, was about my approach, I suppose, to my health and well-being is equally as important, actually. If I'm not well, all these things that I've talked about keeping us in order and keeping us in track as a family, won't happen if I'm not well. So actually, my fitness is important to that. So it has to be fit in. Got to be
so
fit
how
somewhere.
do you? So that's a really interesting subject because I think that again, I don't see any demarcation lines between productivity and I referred to this word in a previous podcast because you say the word productivity and many people will just go straight to sleep.
Yeah,
when I say
exactly,
it's a corporate-y word. I'm on a mission to come up with a new word to replace the word productivity. So we'll call it the P word for the rest of this conversation, because for some people the word productivity is reminiscent of cranking out widgets and getting more people to do more in less hours and that kind of stuff. And really, what I mean by productivity, or the P word, is having some intentionality about the thing you're doing at any given time. That there's been some consideration to, is this the best thing to do with my time, and is now the best time to do it? And I think asking that question generically, so coming back to your email thing, many people might say, oh my God, I'm not going to start looking at my emails when I'm in bed. And I've got to say, I'd agree with them. Generally.
Yeah.
But I also recognise that for you and the particular demands that you have, and we'll come on to kind of the family stuff and so on, but the particular demands you have of not knowing at any day what the shape of your day is going to be, including what you can do directly you get out of bed, then that's a priority because that starts to shape your day. From a productivity perspective, I don't see any demarcation lines between productivity in terms of, thinking about the activities I want to get through in a working day, and productivity around what time we have dinner, what time do I sit down and have some quiet time, how do I make sure that I carve some time out to spend with the kids, how do I make sure that, and actually I think what you do at the end of the day is equally as important to start the day. So I've got another question for you. When do you disconnect from emails or online? How late do you take that into your day?
Yeah. See, this is one of my challenges. It's because of the nature of the work. I have to be really disciplined about. I call it kind of putting your full stop on your working day. You have to be able to meet all of those things that I said at the beginning that I wanted to be able to meet, have that quality family time. I have to put a full stop on my working day. That's made incredibly difficult when I know that I'm clocking off, so to speak, at 3 o'clock to go and do the school run, and America is waking up. And America actually is a big, is a lot of my clients, they love a British voice, don't they? A lot of my clients are American, so that all my emails start whizzing through at 3 o'clock when I'm saying, right, I've finished now. So, and also I could have a request for a directed session where people dial in and like to direct me to do a piece. And more often than not, they're from abroad, so they would have to be in an evening. I just have to make sure that I build in that downtime. And I think actually it's something I do achieve for the family. I clock off at 3. I do all the things that I need to do. with Jess. We work really hard at trying to eat meals together, talk about each other's day, which is really, really important. What's gone well, what's not gone well, all those kind of things. We do that, I think, really well as a family. And then when I get windows like us recording now, Jess is at Brownies for an hour and a half. So I don't have that guilt that I'm taking myself away as such, because she's already occupied doing something else. So I have to kind of be disciplined, I guess, is what I'm saying, and not eat into my evenings.
So how do you do that? How do you do it? How do you make sure that you do clock off at that time?
Well, I switch. My studio gets closed down is the best way to do it. So if I know there's not something scheduled in, when I finish at 3, I switch everything off down here in the shed. All gets closed down.
Okay.
The microphone has its blanket put on it, sleeping bag, all of that happens. So to actually reboot everything, it would take something, big to have come in. I have to be really, really disciplined to put my phone away. That's the problem nowadays, isn't it? That's the challenge, because your emails come through on your phone, don't they?
So how do you do that? What do you do with your phone?
Well, I have to put it away. So when I'm with Jess, I have to put it away. I don't always achieve that, I'd be the first to admit, but I have to just have it not with me, not physically with you. So if we're in the house, for example, it would not be on my person. That's the way to do it. Because otherwise you're tempted to look, aren't you?
Yes.
This tendency that people have to, we stood in the playground and everyone's waiting for their children to come out, and are people looking for their children? No.
All online, yeah.
They're all looking at their phones. And that could be for a variety of reasons, but I put it away is what I try and do.
I think you've touched on something really important there. You said that you put a blanket over your microphone. Does your microphone have a name? You've made me think your microphone's got a name.
You go first as yours. I think because we both know the answer to this, I think, don't we?
I don't. No, I mean as in like a human name. Yeah. And do you anthropomorphise your microphone? What's your microphone called, Mel?
Rick.
I love it. And is he?
You have to declare yours now, because yours has got a name.
My microphone hasn't got a name. Well, not that I can remember. Please tell me.
I think I'm sure it used to have a name. My microphone is called Rick.
Well,
and Rick has a sleeping bag, as I said.
Okay.
It's a Rode.
Yeah. Well, I'm
illiterate.
I'm a 4-microphone family, so I
so you could have had Huey, Dewey, and Louie, or that's only 3.
Yeah. I could have had probably in my case dopey, sleepy, grumpy, bashful.
Yes.
Yeah, that works actually, because the lav mic, the tie clip mic, that doesn't come out very often, so he's bashful. Probably the one I record the podcast on is grumpy, because it's the one that gets the most use. So, okay, I just slightly sidetracked there. I love the idea of your microphone having a name and having a blanket. I think that's perfect.
And also, whilst we're on that subject, I have Pete in my booth.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Pete?
What, like the Irish thing you dig out of the ground?
No.
Don't you use soundproofing like everyone else?
Pete is a parrot.
Oh, yes, I have seen Pete, yes.
Yeah,
Pete
you see, it all comes flooding back. For company, see?
Yes,
it's a lonely job.
It is. Yeah, well, as some of the people that regularly look at my Twitter feed have seen, I have Pepper.
Yes. Well, I have Bovril, but I don't let Bovril in the booth because he's a bit smelly. Bless him. He's a bit old and smelly. But no, we have something in the world of voiceover where when you're trying to be conversational, when you're asked to be conversational and you're talking to someone,
you talk to
Pete is my someone. Yeah. You see?
Absolutely. See these little tricks
Works for me.
People don't know what goes into it. Sorry. So I think what you've just said there is really powerful, because the physicality of putting your blanket on Rick and shutting your system down. So you've got to go to some effort to get your system up and running again, to respond to something, to not having it just on hand.
That's the
removing
point.
That temptation.
Yes. It would, it's that whole having to reboot the whole system. And I don't do it very often. I would rather, if I had seen an email and seen something come in, you learn that actually you can reply and say, that's great, I'd love to do that job, but I can't do it until tomorrow.
Yeah.
because it can always wait till tomorrow. They'll always tell you it needs to be done yesterday. And actually, when you challenge that, or you say, yes, I can do that, but I'll do it tomorrow, they'll say, that's fine.
Learning when to stop, learning to have some level of discipline that there is an end to something, and making that, and it comes back to that intentionality. I'm making a conscious decision to say the thing, whatever it does, ends at a certain time. And there's a ritual, there's a routine, and we joke about the blanket, but in all seriousness, that is your end of day routine. Once he's covered up and once the system's down,
that's it.
There is something physical that happens that marks, that's the end of that bit, and I'm going to go and do something else. And it will take something quite significant for me to say, okay, right, I'll come back and boot it all up and take the blanket off. And, in your case, clearly not picking Jess up from school is not an option. So, that's probably got to happen, isn't it?
Yeah. So no, I've not really thought of it like that. But actually, yes, it is it's the final closure, the sleeping blanket on Rick. But it is. And
the other point about putting your phone away, again, I think is really interesting to explore, because yes, we all have smartphones now. We have access to literally any piece of information that you want at any time. There is now no excuse to not read an email, no excuse to not look something up, no excuse to not respond to somebody. And we end up putting ourselves in that position where we feel that we're online and connected at all times. And neurologically, our brains can't deal with that. They cannot manage that, and that causes sleeplessness, and it causes people's inability to relax. And I think it's no coincidence that, from colouring books to mindfulness, these things are really taking a root now, because people are having to make an intentional decision to say, actually, I'm going to have some downtime. I'm going to have some time away from online, away from my phone, away from being connected. I'm going to sit there with my eyes shut for 10 minutes and do nothing else other than pay attention to my breathing. And I don't think it's a coincidence that more and more people are turning to that kind of stuff, because we've got to get away from it.
Yeah, and I don't find that easy, Steve. I'd be the first to admit that it's access, isn't it, to your business. And you need to say, well, no, I'm not working on my business right now. I'm doing my family thing. The bit that I don't do so well, maybe we'll come to this later, is what you've just talked about, is the me, just me.
Yeah.
All of the things that I tend to do this for is to carve time for the family. And one thing I recognise I need to do better is to do whatever I need to do, is to carve time or whatever it is I need to do to just have time for me. Because that's important as well, actually, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and I think that that old statement that you see on airlines about, put your own airbag on before you put your children's on, that you are no help, you're no help to them unless you're looking at, and you said it earlier about, that you've got to be physically fit. That's important. Your health and well-being is important, not just from a role model perspective, but also genuinely to make sure that you've got the energy that's necessary to do all of the various things you do with all of the various hats on. You couldn't do that if you sat on a sofa and ate pizza and watched telly until 1 o'clock in the morning. And we all do that at some point. But if that was just the regular routine, there's got to be a little bit of discipline around, when do I get my exercise? What do I put inside my body? How do I convert that into energy? How do I give some thought to how that all works for me and my family? And the idea of focusing on yourself, for some people, seems selfish. But actually, if you take a step back and think, well, why is that important? Why do I need to? I do meditation. I try and do it every day. I do it for at least 10 minutes a day. Sometimes I'll sit there for an hour at weekends and so on. And part of the routine that I do, it's not just about disconnecting for myself and my own well-being, but I recognise that my ability to have relationships with other people and how I interact with other people and how I affect their world is driven by how balanced I am and how centred I am. And if I'm off kill and I'm not thinking about the right things or taking the right things into consideration, I can have a negative impact on someone else's world. And certainly with family and people close to you, you can do that fairly easily. You haven't got to be thoughtless for very long to spoil someone's day. And actually taking some time to stop and think about, how do I repair myself in order to make sure that that I'm then able to give back in the way I want to give back is an interesting area, and that's probably one to consider.
Yeah, because one thing and again, I think this is something I need to do better at, that time for me, because over time, I believe anyway, if you give and give and give to everybody else, you're making sure everybody else's cup is full, aren't you?
Yep.
I forget to make sure that mine is, at least half full. And actually, if you don't look after yourself, people can have a tendency then to resent that. And actually, that's not what this is all about, is it? You don't want to resent your loved ones for giving what you're giving. But if you don't take that time to make sure that you're well, you can move in that direction, I feel. You can start to resent the fact that everybody's drawing on your time.
Let's take someone in a completely different situation. So a busy executive guy, no family ties, no kids, totally focused on his career and on generating a high level of income and all those kinds of things. Unless he's taken a step back and asked himself the question, yeah, but why am I doing that? Why? What's the point? What's the end goal? Because, human beings, we're teleological. It's hardwired in us to find patterns, for there to be reasons, for there to be a reason why things happen. And different people have different views around higher powers and bigger pictures and all that kind of stuff. And that's a slightly different subject, one for a different interview. But, unless you've actually asked yourself the question, well, why am I doing this? Why am I working 14-hour days, 6 days, 7 days in a row? And you can get on that treadmill, can't you? And you can think it's important because it's important, and you convince yourself it's important because it's important, and don't make yourself take a step back and say, well, yeah, but why am I doing that? And I think people are starting to ask that question. So we've talked about the voiceover piece, and we've talked about where the day ends at 3:00 with Rick and his blanket. How do you juggle that stuff and family life and home life then? So what's important to you in terms of home life? What certain things happen at certain times?
Well, I suppose the first thing, as a general principle, and again, this is something that some people don't like, one first general principle is if I see something that needs to get done, something comes in, and it would be as quick to do it that it is to put it on a list, I would just do it.
David Allen, getting things done, 2-minute rule. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that what that is? Is there a...
Absolutely.
I knew you were going to say there was a proper theory for that.
There's a guy.
There's a guy. Well, anyway, I follow that guy then.
It's a proper theory because it works for you. So therefore,
that works for me.
It's a proper theory. Yeah.
It just makes sense. If it's going to take you as long to, however you collate your lists, whether that's electronically or on a piece of paper, if it takes you as long to get it on the piece of paper or in the Excel spreadsheet or on your, client management tool, on your app on your phone, just do it.
Yep.
It's just common sense.
Absolutely agree.
The second thing, I guess, is that, and this comes from my corporate days, I have a thing about never doing the same thing, if I can help it, twice. So I say, if you do something once, great, you do it. If you find yourself doing it exactly the same or pretty much the same a second time, is there a way to automate it? So I say once, great, twice, automate is my mantra. There you go. You can stick that one in your notes.
So how do you... I'm writing while we're
there
talking.
You go.
How
once,
do you,
great.
So how do you automate things then?
So, for example, I'm the template queen. I have templates for everything. So for emails, for example, I have a whole folder that holds all my templates. So for an audition, you're going to say the same. You're likely to be saying the same thing over and over again. Have a template for it. So you're not having to type it out again and again and again. Contacts that I get. So people who just contact me and say, how does it work? Ta-da, template. Bring up your template. Don't retype it out time after time after time. Shortcuts on your keyboard. Who uses shortcuts? Everybody. You think everybody does.
You started to sound like you were in a training session. Who uses shortcuts?
Who
Hands
uses
up.
shortcuts?
Could all the podcast audience please put your hand up if you're currently using shortcuts?
Because if you're not, You should. How much has anybody? Come on, tell me there's a book. Tell me there's a man, there's a woman who's written a book on how much time does that save us?
I'm sure there is a study.
Somebody would have quantified it.
Yeah.
The other things around, if I can have if I've got more than one paid recording job to do, have one in the bag before lunch. Because then I would always want to do the second in plenty of time. I hate it if I'm really tight with time that I want to be finished recording and edited, so it's all tidied up however you need to send it off by 2:30. So I have a half an hour buffer, and I guess that's just a routine that I've got into that makes me feel better. But it's a check, isn't it? It's a checking time for me that makes sure that I am completed by 3.
I think that probably, if people only take one thing away from this conversation, that building in white space, building in the space into your day, whether that's at the end of the day, the start of the day. For me, if you don't build into your calendar some space to say, that's my buffer, that enables me to overrun without going past my absolute deadline, or that buys me the time to be able to stop and think about what I'm doing, whether that's at the start of the day in terms of planning your day, the end of the day in terms of, the gap between where your day must end. For some people, and I do this myself, I build in some journaling time at the end of the day. So I journal what's gone on in the day, because actually, like your blanket, that for me is the end of the day. Once I've done my journaling, and I have a work one, which I do at the end of my working day, and then, as you might expect, I have a pad and pen by the side of my bed, and I have an end of day one that I do for the end of the day, and that puts an end to my day to say, right, this is what's gone well. This is what I need to think about. If I had the day again, I'd do even better. And building in that white space, but interesting.
You need one of those duvets. Have you seen those duvets that you write on?
I do have a duvet. Oh, okay, sorry.
No, the ones that you write on, the ones
really?
they come.
Oh, dear, no.
They come with a material pen, and so it means that you don't actually, because you're not totally waking yourself up to write on a pad, so you can just kind of feel around for your pen and then write whatever it is that you need to write on your duvet. And then, obviously, it's not transferable from your duvet, but modern technology, you can just snap it on your phone, can't you?
That sounds like a good idea. I don't personally. I don't do the kind of waking up in the night and writing things down. Generally, and I think that's partly because I've found a system that works for me. That means I'm rarely in a place like that. But actually, the idea of getting and I use these field notes books because I think they're really cool. But to sit there at the end of the day and write in a book with a pen, and it's a pen and a book that I carry around with me all day, and say, right, this is my day, this is how I feel about my day, and I do some gratitude stuff around, this is what I've been grateful in my day and that kind of stuff. And I think just having that end of day ceremony is, I find quite powerful.
Yeah. Well, I guess we do that kind of thing verbally. That's the dinner table discussion.
Yeah.
And it is powerful.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Steve. It's really powerful and really great for kids to kind of get into that way of thinking about, what you think you've done well today.
Yeah.
And equally, if something didn't go so well, perhaps what I could do differently next time.
Absolutely.
How would I deal with that differently next time? So I think it's very powerful.
Mel,
perhaps I should try.
I'm mindful of your time. And what I want to do is make sure that we cover everything you want to cover. Can you think of anything that you do in your day, one or two things, you talked about time-saving things, that would be transferable outside of the world of voiceovers, what you do? So are there habits or routines you've got that actually you've always done, regardless of the environment you've worked in, or things that make a difference for you?
I think I've said it. Once great, twice automate. It's my mantra.
That's fabulous. I like it.
Anything you can think of that we have that, the deja vu moment. Oh, I've done this before. I've written this before. I've said that before.
Yeah.
I would always stand back and question, do we have something available to us that will mean I don't have to retype that or re-go and find that particular thing or document or whatever? Always take the time to question whether you can automate it. There's a tool. Someone's created a tool, haven't they, for everything?
There is, and the downside to having these devices with us at all times means that they can be distracting. But as we try to repeat as a theme in these episodes, actually making them work for you, just giving some thought to making it work for you,
yes,
is key. Have you encountered Wunderlist?
No.
Oh, Wunderlist is fab. We love Wunderlist in our house. So there's an app called Wunderlist, and you can use it for sort of quite complicated task management if you want. We use it for one thing: shopping. So you install the Wunderlist app on your phone. So if you're standing in the kitchen and you realise that you need beans, you just press on the button, switch your phone and press on the button, type in the word beans, and it'll automatically add that onto your electronic shopping list. But the beauty of it is that it's synced across all our devices. So if I'm on my way to Sainsbury's and I've already got a shopping list and Lisa remembers we need sardines,
or other supermarkets are available.
Yeah, indeed. Or a new blanket for our microphones. She can put that onto the shopping list while I'm on the way. So when I get there, I've got the latest list. But the thing that I particularly like about that is that what it does is it removes the friction, it removes the gap between you realising you need something and the process of then going and getting a pen and a piece of paper and writing it on there. Now, I know a lot of people stand by, and it's the right thing to do, having a shopping list with a pen there in the kitchen, so it's there to write on, and that works. But of course, the challenge is that at some point, and if you're running a busy life like we do, someone's got to take that bit of paper and go to the supermarket.
Yeah, I like it.
At all times, there's a gap, there's a disconnect between when that process of writing the list is completed. But the other thing you can do with it is you can bring your lists back. So you're not starting from scratch each time. You can just say, right, here are 50 things that we get every week, so they'll always be on the list, and you're just adding on the additional things. But that's synchronizing across different devices, and as you said, once is great, twice is automate. I like it. I've written it down.
Excellent. I love it. Wunderlist.
Wunderlist.
Also available in the show notes.
For die Deutsche. What's evident, and I kind of sense this is going to come out in more and more of these conversations, is where people take things that they found have worked for them in corporate life or work life and just apply it to their life in general. It enables them to get more things done. And you've covered all sorts. There's so much here. They will go into the show notes, but from a planning perspective, in terms of never doing the same thing twice, once great, twice automate, I love it. Templates for your emails, keyboard shortcuts, massive fan of keyboard shortcuts. And, it takes a second to learn it and get used to it, but that is a second well spent, particularly if you spend a lot of time at your keyboard. The routines bit is really cool, and this idea of building in the half-hour buffer at the end, so you're already building in that white space, grey zone, whatever it is, to say, right, I aim for the job to finish there. I can allow myself an extra half an hour maximum, but then you're really clear on your drop dead point. At that point, it stops. I'm planning to get things completed by that point before Rick gets his blanket on. I might cut out some of those references to the blankets, but I do like it. Writing things down, if people only take one thing away, get it out of your head. As David Allen says, our minds are for having ideas, not holding them. Write things down, get it out of your head, and get it onto a bit of paper somewhere. And this idea of at the end of the day, an often overused phrase, having a shutdown, and there's a real intentionality about the day is ending, and whether that's shutting your system down so you can't then easily get back into it. But I think for all of us, it's deciding where the deadline is. The day has got to stop somewhere.
It has.
So you plan on a Friday. Each day, then you revisit that plan, so you're clear in your mind about what you've got to do that day, and having rolling lists and moving things up the priority. That's fabulous, Mel. You've covered so much stuff. I mean, there's even more in there. I'll get the rest of these added into the show notes. But as I think is going to start to become a tradition, one of the things that, from a discussion perspective, we're looking at in these conversations is waving a magic wand tomorrow and something in your life being 10% better in terms of how you do what you do, what would that thing be for you?
I think it's been really helpful, actually, to talk stuff through. But I think what's come out of this for me is being honest about the fact that I do all of the carving all this time to do the family time, and I need to find a way, whatever that way is, to make sure I do the just me bit, which I don't do so well. I know I don't do so well. And here's an example. This can be a challenge. Oh gosh, see, if I say this out loud, I've got to do it, haven't I?
Depends whether it makes a final cut.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Here goes. So why is it that I manage to plan all these things so successfully to do everything else, but I can't do it for me? Is it going to be like Lisa with a laptop that do I just need to open the book, for example? I don't read. I'd love to sit and read as much as I used to before. So do I need to open the front page every day in the same way that you've made Lisa open a laptop for maybe next week? Then that'll mean I might read one page. Is that the kind of thing? Or no, this is my challenge. I follow a chap called James Rhodes. You may or may not have heard of him. He's a pianist who his story is that he was not an academically trained pianist. He came to the piano later in his life. I think some quite openly he talks about his mental health issues led him to music. He was self-taught, all that kind of thing. And he's written a book, How to Teach Yourself Piano, and maintains that if you follow this book, if you carve 45 minutes a day, is what he says, but actually, if you wade through the rubbish that we do, and he says this in his book, probably spend 45 minutes online, don't we? If you follow the book for 45 minutes a day, you can play the piano in 6 weeks.
Okay.
Now, I used to play the piano, Steve. Can I play the piano now? Well, it's hugely frustrating. So I gave myself that challenge, and I'm failing miserably because for all the things I managed to achieve to carve time, I'm not carving the me time.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why do we not achieve that for ourselves when I've just talked about all the things I've talked about, the importance of it? So I need to find a way that works for me to apply, I don't know, whatever it is I need to apply to achieve the me time.
It feels like there's a piece around the practicality of, and obviously in the subject we're covering in some of the episodes around habits and behaviours and that kind of stuff. So there's probably some of that in there, but I wonder if underpinning that, actually it's more about your motivation, and it's more about why the me time gets sacrificed in place of the other things. And so maybe it's I want to carve out some me time, but without the guilt, without me feeling like it's wrong for me to just do this because it's something I want to do. And I guess if perhaps that is it. I tell you can say it out loud, aren't you? Because I wouldn't feel guilty. No.
I don't think, but I still don't apply all of those things that we've talked about that if I applied would carve that time, wouldn't it?
And I've certainly found, just as an initial response, spending 10 minutes a day, I call it quiet time in my calendar, but meditating actually that's my me time, and I'm disconnecting from everything, so I cannot be interrupted. And actually, in the scheme of it, 24 hours a day we work. Those people who are employed maybe work an 8-hour working day. So 10 minutes out of those 8 hours, just to sit there and recharge your batteries and get yourself ready for your working day, is time well spent. Now, in that statement, I've just said, get yourself ready for your working day, because then that makes it sound like it's okay to do it because it's for work. But actually, the reason you should do it is because it's important to you and it makes a difference to you. And I think that maybe getting you to come up with a way of getting that time and being clear in your mind the reason that you're doing it, and not worrying that that's at odds with something else in your life. Yeah,
I do it for running. That's me time, I guess, isn't it? I carve the time to run.
Yeah.
So it's the piano. That's what I've got to achieve, isn't it?
Okay.
I think
I think we're coming back to having these batteries that we need to recharge, and having some intentionality around. There's one that's about me having the resource, the energy, the creative strength to be able to go and do the other stuff. And if I don't recharge that one, then I'm constantly beefing up the others. Anyway, yes, I shall go and have a look at that and see if we can come up with something as a theme for a couple of weeks that might help with that.
There'll be an app for that. The Me Time app
for that. Yeah, the Me Time app.
Can I be the voice?
You can be. You can be the voice. You can play the piano, and then at the end of the recording, you can put your blanket over Rick and say goodnight. I'm really, 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 really grateful for you spending time this evening. I know, I knew you were busy anyway. Then when you came on and told me how busy you were, I felt even more guilty.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. It's really, really good fun.
Good. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. You need to tell people where they can get hold of you. So for people that are looking for that right voice or that right website, by the sounds of it, or indeed that person's going to help them with their school stuff, where people can contact you.
Well, yes, the website's the easiest one because it's got all of my different contact details on. So it's melsbritishvoice.co.uk. And on there, you'll see where you can hook up on Twitter, email, whichever way you prefer.
So what's the website address, Mel?
melsbritishvoice.co.uk.
And you're on Twitter?
I am.
Do you have any other social media presence in terms of the voiceover stuff and so on? LinkedIn, you do that?
I do LinkedIn, yes. So again, Mel's British Voice.
Super. Well, listen, I'm really grateful. Thank you ever so much. What do you now need to do with the rest of your evening?
Well, probably go and say goodnight to my daughter. What time is it? Yes, it's bedtime. She'll be back from Brownies. Yeah, and waiting. Under strict instructions not to come down and run in whilst recording. So go and say goodnight.
I shall go and do the same with my... I'll go and see what members of the family are out there. I don't know who's there yet. I'll find out when I go out there. So that was Mel and I chatting about the challenges of working with a changing schedule, juggling a busy family life, and the perils of reading emails from your bed. I hope you found it interesting and useful. If you did, please let us know either by a review or rating on iTunes, or chat to me on Twitter @SharpPodcast or at the website @sharppodcast.com. I'll put some notes in the show notes of the ideas and solutions that Mel shared with us, and I'll start thinking about how we can help her solve her Getting Better challenge in the area of planning time for yourself without feeling like you're disrupting everything else or feeling guilty or selfish. So I'm going to go and do that. I hope you have a great week. Bye-bye. I need to make sure that I press stop and not erase. I've never had an audio file this big. I'm not quite sure what to do with it. I'll treat you with some reverence.